This is the Code to Cash podcast.
Pricing is not a billing problem. Pricing is a code problem. Pricing is a product.
Price point is really the last thing that actually even matters.
You need to have the most atomic unit of your product, not your product.
Hello, thanks for tuning in. This is the Code to Cash podcast. This is Ajit and Dor, your host, with Ariel Assaraf from Coralogics, and we are really delighted to have him with us. Talk everything about how he's been able to grow the company and specifically talk about pricing and monetization today. So thank you for joining us. Take it away, Dor.
Hey, Ariel, how's it going? Great to have you here.
Great. Thank you very much for having me, guys. Happy to be here.
So let's kickstart the conversation. We just started to talk about it just a little bit before the show. Maybe you can kind of quickly get us up to speed with the story of, yourself and Coralogics and, kind of have our listeners tune in.
Yeah. Try to make it quick. About myself, started like many other Israelis in our industry here, started the intelligence unit 200. Spent a few years there, later joined Verint Systems, spent 4 years there. In 2015, I was about 25 years old. We started Coralogics. Initially didn't go very well. The initial idea was to create intelligence on top of existing products. Various different products that existed in the market back then. We found that the ability to integrate into them, provide additional value, add cost to the customer, a lot of these things prevented us from succeeding, and then company restructured or pivoted in significantly at the end of 2017 and kind of restarted its journey in beginning of 2018 with 5 people, no customers and no revenue, and ever since gradually improving the product incrementally and started from logs, then later metrics, tracing, now also security, CSPM, network security. So a very broad platform with the concept of analyze before index. So we used to rely on the index for storage, and today we analyze about 70% of the data that goes through Coralogics is never stored anywhere, just being analyzed and extracted for relevant aggregations, alerts, anomalies, and so on.
Crazy. I'm always, impressed hearing. It's not the first time I'm hearing y'all's story, but every time I hear it, it's always impressive to hear you do this kind of pivot, midlife of the company and take it, all the way up. It's incredibly impressive.
Thank you very much.
Would also, Ariel, would love to understand a little bit about how your sort of monetization for the company has evolved over time. And just looking to learn and how did you define which segments you were going to go after? What were your goals for optimizing even for the monetization funnel?
Yeah. So a few key learnings we've had from the initial 3 years. First one is you have to set up your pricing in a way that differentiate you from the competitors. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've learned throughout the years here is one of the most powerful messaging pages on your website is your pricing page. Mm-hmm. Not the solutions or the product page or the blog. Those are great messaging pages. One of the most powerful ones is the messaging page. And, just to simplify that, imagine you go into an online shop that sells T-shirts. Okay, you don't know much about that T-shirt. It's just a standard black T-shirt. Mm-hmm. You go to the pricing page and it's $5. You kind of already know everything you need to know about it. If it's $1,000, you kind of already know everything you need to know about it, or you're going to search. Yeah. So we've learned that pricing, in a very established market, observability is a very established market. Mm-hmm. We're selling to DevOps people that are very tough buyers. We have huge competitors, 6 IPO'd companies and 3 more over $1 billion worth. Right. Differentiating the product is it's a huge pain in itself. How do you differentiate in such market? So the easiest is to differentiate by price, is to differentiate by how you monetize. And so you got to put that on. So you got to think backwards from, okay, how do I want to monetize? How do I want to price this? And then what technology enables me to do that? And this is what we thought. We said, well, data is growing exponentially. Our saying here in Coralogics is simple. Data grows faster than revenue, okay? Doesn't matter how much your company is going to grow. Data is going to outpace that. You're bound to either eat your margins or reduce your coverage. That's the only way to go today. Right. And so we thought, let's handle massive loads of data and offer a new pricing model that others didn't in the past. And that led to how we created the product. I can get to it in a minute. But then I want to say something about a lot of other companies, both in our space and other spaces, which is a very common mistake, is to do exactly the opposite. Is to look at what your technology does and say, well, how do I price this? What do I do now? And the problem there is, when you go that way, you find yourself with very, very, very complex pricing models. So in our world, it'll be, well, I have a TSDB that my cost on the TSDB, the time series DB, is based on metric series. So I'm going to charge my customers based on metric series amount. Right? And then I want to do APM, so I have to have my agents spread on the servers. So I need to also server-based charge. And then I have my logs ingestion that is based on quota, so I'm going to add quota. But then what do I do when many people run queries? So I got to charge by user. And companies find themselves, and customers find themselves getting bills that are like, sometimes, we run into a POC and we go to the customer and say, hey, give us your bill. Show us the invoice so we can be competitive here. It takes us like a day to process and understand what the hell is this guy doing. Invoices.
Right. I think my next startup is going to be reverse engineering invoices as a service.
Dude, you do that to cloud invoices and some of the vendors, and that's going to be a very big business.
So seems like the setup is one of sticker shock, right? These people opted into something, and like you were mentioning, like I just wanted to re-emphasize the point that the data usage and the usage is growing faster than revenue, and often that doesn't necessarily is the case. But so the value that they may be getting is actually reducing over time.
That's one crazy thing about observability. Observability data is different than many other data types.
Got it.
And security data.
Interesting.
For a lot of the data types, if it's user data, business information, the more data you have, the more you know, right?
Yeah.
For observability and security, the more data you have, the less you know.
Interesting.
So the more data you have, the more sources you have, the less you know, the more you pay, the more inferior your performance gets. And
very interesting.
It's like a very, it's a problematic path we're on.
Got it.
Because you see companies, great companies, phenomenal companies, Snowflake, IPO'd at 175% net retention. Everyone was like, wow, it's great. I think it's toxic net retention. I think good net retention is 125, 130, 135.
Interesting.
At 175, you're basically telling your customer before he's joining, because it's public numbers, hey, you should know that the average customer is going to pay me 15x within 5 years. Are you in or not? Right? That's and if I want to sign $1 million deal, I need to figure, hey, the average customer of this company is going to end up in 15 million in 5 years. I think what we've done, we had a lot of luck, by the way, because sometimes, it's evolution. You're pushed to the corner. You got to create a differentiator. Easiest differentiator is price. The easiest way to differentiate a price is to simplify and to make it cheaper. That's the easiest place. So we had to go there, and we had to create, and we try to go the differentiation path of machine learning and build intelligence on top of other products. That didn't go too well. So we said, well, if we just make it very, very cost effective and solve this problem, then we're gonna win. And how do you do that when there's a fixed cost of storage where you can't play games? Storage is storage. You can try to compress it a million different ways. cloud providers don't give you discount on storage almost at all. You can do spot instances. You don't get, if you pay in advance, you get 0 discount on storage, right? If you just commit to 3 years, Amazon will give you like 62%, but not on storage. And so we figured, okay, this is the most problematic, this is the biggest rock in our account. If we can just move this aside, we can probably process a gigabyte at a cost that turned out to be a sixth of the price. So we actually decreased our price per unit per gigabyte by 70% while increasing margins, almost doubling margins. And so how do you do that? You start asking, there's a discovery phase you do with yourself. You start asking questions. Well, first of all, is everyone stupid? Right? Because what I just seen, everyone are seeing it. And second, if they're not stupid, why aren't they doing exactly the same? So they aren't stupid, and they weren't doing that because the storage is essential for many of the questions that you need to ask your data that requires strong long-term state. And real time, in our minds, was not stateful. So how do you handle that problem? So we thought 2 things. One, to answer no knowns and known unknowns, I don't have to store all the raw data. I can bake my pre-assumptions on the data into the stream, and I can let the customer add his own pre-assumptions. And then I answer the no knowns and known unknowns. What does it mean? For logs and metrics and traces and security, it's very easy for me to always record counts and labels for error rates, duration, latency, CPU, suspected IPs, dangling DNS, all these things. I know. Then the customer can also add his enrichment, his alerts, his parsing. And then what we've done, we've embedded a DB into each and every one of the streams and created a way using an hyperlog to basically produce the memory footprint. And each and every one of the microservices know how to write only the state to that embedded DB, which is RocksDB is great at queries of key value. And then we can write just the long-term state there. And then we stream the data. We never leave the stream. Everything is being synced into the stream. User definitions every few seconds. Machine learning models that are offline are being synced. So when an event enters, it only leaves the stream after it's fully processed. That full process costs Coralogix today much, 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 much less than it costs to send a gigabyte to the internet. Okay.
Right.
What I love about this story is basically now I see that Coralogix product is its pricing. Basically, you're a pricing company, if you will.
What's so interesting about this is we're selling infrastructure software. We're infrastructure. Infrastructure will always be measured by price because it's infrastructure. Also in the physical world, someone wants to build a road, okay?
Yeah.
It's not a building. You can't seduce me with nice, tiles. Who builds the most stable, reliant, on-time, lowest cost road? That's all I care about.
Yeah.
Security, compliance, performance, price. Those are the things that people care about. There's a lot of features, before the meeting we just spoke about the correlation of all the data in one alert. All these things are great. But you got to ask yourself, what is the one thing that I'm solving for the customer that it's his biggest problem? And then we came into a market where we felt like the lowest end solution, call it CloudWatch, call it Stackdriver and GCP, costs a fifth of the high-end solution, but it gives you half the value. In this room, there's so much room to play because the equation wasn't quite there. And you hear so many people saying, well, I like Splunk. Well, I like Datadog. It's just expensive. There's no such thing. I love something, but it's expensive. There's no such thing. It means People, sometimes they don't understand that themselves, but it means the ROI isn't good enough. That's the only way to interpret that.
Right.
We said, okay, how do we solve that with technology? And it was very hard, by the way, to explain to investors, because when we started pitching that, and we had 2 investors who believed it was mid-COVID. We were stuck on sales for 6 months, and we heavily invested. So we said, well, we don't have customers or anything now, like no new sales. Let's just put all engineering into drop everything and do this one thing and release it. We called it the TCO quota optimizer. We let the customers in the stream define where the data goes through. So you can choose, okay, I want just to parse and alerts and then put it in the archive. I want anomalies and then throw it away. I want it only in the archive for long-term queries.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to convince investors, and everyone were saying like, oh, so you're just a cheaper product. And you can't win by cheap. And I said, well, if I created a car that runs on air, is it cheaper fuel or is it an interesting technology? One might argue, well, dude, I mean, I don't care about $100 of gas every month. So, but dude, it's a car that runs on air and it has so many other advantages.
Yep.
So you may want to take a spin.
So one thing I'm realizing is it's price differentiation, but also the existing market solved a problem in a very inefficient way. It seems like, right? When you're trying to solve a data problem, there are many approaches to solving a data problem, and this is what I'm sort of trying to summarize what I'm learning. You can solve a data problem by accumulating and holding all the data in the world, and then saying, I'm going to build a data lake, and then I'm going to do like these 10,000 things before I even ask the data question. Yeah. And you're saying, I don't have time for, I know a lot of the questions I already want to ask, and there might be questions I don't know, but for the ones I do know, why do I need to store all the data? It just seems very inefficient. Right?
You start with the most expensive part of the analysis by index and storage and replicating.
Right.
Imagine you're looking for gold. What's the first thing you do? You assess the area, right? You come with metal detectors and you see if you started by moving the mountain, then no one will ever make money of gold because it doesn't make any sense. So we looked at it. By the way, you were mentioning data lake. It's funny. We started from just data, and then it was database, and then it was data warehouse, and then it was big data, and now it's data lake. Right. And people aren't seeing this exponentiality. It's going to be data ocean within not a long. Because people are looking for new names for this. Right. This instead of just saying, "Dude, you have too much data." And you mentioned the word hoarder. So if you remember, there was a Larry David episode when this dude is hoarding the COVID stuff, and everyone figured that out. And hated it.
Yeah.
So we put when we launched it, we put a huge billboard on the 101 in the Bay Area that says "Don't be a data hoarder."
Interesting.
that was exactly what we were thinking.
Okay.
You're just hoarding data in case you'll need something, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. And we said, the unknown unknowns. Yeah. We need to figure out an answer, and it took us a while. And then we created a new service that remotely queries your own archive, your own S3 bucket, high speed. So we know how to write in stream like an interesting dynamic format to your own archive and then query it. And we said people will wait a minute for the unknown unknowns that happens. Mm-hmm. You don't need to wait half a second. Yeah. There are still problems with customers that say, well, some of the data I need to very frequently search. So we allow one of the stream options is to also store it with us on the frequent search, typically about 20% of the data. This is why I said about 70% is never stored. But about 20% of the data, and this is super high speed because, a customer with 10 terabytes that we're used to moving very slow is now storing 2. And our index says don't do anything besides user queries because they don't need to run the alerts. So we solved a pain of you have a lot of data, you know less. So we also help to solve that. And so an important observation that we've discovered when you use the customer's own storage and not yours, from a pricing standpoint, you stop becoming a reseller of cloud because when I sell retention, I have zero value at that point. The data is already being processed. It's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I just keep it longer, right? What do? I mean, I need to keep my margins. I'm a SaaS company. I need to be like the 70 margin. What I do is I buy storage from Amazon and I sell it to you at 70% more. There's nothing else I can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you use the customer's own storage, leave everything aside. I don't need that markup. So everyone are enjoying. And you know what? That is the lowest margin we get, because when I just triple your price on storage, you're going to bargain and I'm going to lower the price because I want the deal.
Right.
So we figured, coming from a point of view of what is the pricing model that is right for my customer, and then how do I go back and create the technology that'll enable it?
Makes sense.
And then it went out.
Ariel,
Yes,
you got me curious because I'm assuming that behind this amazing monetization journey, there's a lot of people and processes and stakeholders. Maybe you can share just a little bit how you went about structuring your team to support that journey. Like, because it seems to me like there's research in this story, there is business decisions in this story, there's billing in this story. Like, how, from structure perspective, did you went about that?
It's like the Oscars. I don't want to forget anyone. Okay. But there was a lot of involvement from the go-to-market team, me and the CTO. Those are the main stakeholders here. Okay. Go-to-market team would just throw a ball at the customer, see how they respond to the price, see how they understand the model, come back with feedback, say, hey, we got to... So for instance, now we came out with tracing. A month in, the sales guys come and say, hey guys, did you know our traces came out more expensive than this competitor? And I said, well, it can't be. We need to solve that. So at this deal, we lose money. That's our punishment for not figuring this out early enough. We give the price, and here's the technology that will enable us to give that price and still make our margin next time. And that's a learning process that was evolving. But mostly me and my partner, my CTO, we're sitting for hours and hours. We spent, I guess, over the past 6 years, like an average of 10 hours a day together. So it's very hard to go and put my finger on it. But it was mostly a thesis, go to market, feedback, and that was our product feedback loop there. And now, once we have the product out, you start worrying on from other monetization aspects. So what is, and that's an equation that we haven't figured yet, but we're trying to, okay? So in economy, there's the balance equation, right? What is the exact balance you need to have the best efficacy? What is the balance between deal size, ICP, ideal customer profile, and sales cycle length to get to the best sales efficiency possible? Okay? Because I can sell $1 million deal or $2 million deal that takes me a year to sell, but I'd rather sell 6 deals during that year of 2 months each of $200,000 because that's 1.2 million. And maybe they grow faster afterwards. Okay? And so what we're constantly doing is looking at it and saying, what will be the classic customer, the right spot to enter, so we can run a very tight POC process, because we always have to do a POC. It's something that once we get big, I guess in 2-3 years, Coralogix will be like a pre or post IPO company. And then the brand lets you sell without POC, which is great for sales efficiency. It's not great for customer retention, by the way, because a lot of people are not sure where they're getting. But when we run a POC, we figured 3 things has to happen. First, there has to be a demo to the decision maker himself, the guy who signs the check. And we don't do that if he's not coming to the meeting. CTO, CEO, I don't care who that is. He has to be on a meeting and approve. Then a broader demo to the team. And then we agree on a POC scope. We sign it together, and the customer agrees on price before POC. So we say, here's the POC criteria. If we answer this, are you willing to pay that?
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the decision maker who knows us now and asks if he approves that. We
Right.
enter the POC. We don't sign the price, and there's going to be
Right.
negotiation. That's fine, but I want to understand we're speaking the same language, because how much are you willing to pay for the pain that I'm solving? And then we start running the process, typically 2 or 3 weeks, and then we're stuck in procurement and legal for another month. So from demo till end, it's about 8 weeks, and the average deal size roughly 170,000.
Wow.
So
amazing.
So that gives you nice, nice buffers to run tight and good sales efficiency. But then what happened is 2022 came, and suddenly deals are parked with procurement and negotiation for 2 months. We said, well, we can't have that. It's going to affect the efficiency, because now I ran the same process. I have the same people. I sell the same deal size. It just took 3 months instead of 2. So we said, go for larger. And for the past couple quarters, the ACV is 350. Okay? It creates a bit of you're more stressed about these type of customers, right? But it creates more efficiency, because now I can have a double sales cycle length and still stay at the same efficiency. We had a drop in Q3. Our
Makes
magic
sense.
number was 1.2 Q1, 1.1 Q2, 0.7 Q3. And now in Q4, it's going to top 1 again because we adjusted. But it's always the balance that you have to find. What is the exact balance that
Right.
enables you to make efficient decisions?
Interesting. Wow. Something that's really like being highlighted for me here is you're sort of turning a lot of preconceptions on the head, right? You turned the whole value-based pricing preconception on the head and said, hey, this is not about, let's just admit that this is an infrastructure thing. It's a commodity. It's almost like your negotiation is closer to sort of the lowest bid government. It's not lowest bid contract, but it's closer to that, right? You're not saying we're going to decide the pricing in a woo-woo fashion later on. You're saying, let's agree on what you want and we're going to deliver that to you. So in the sense, you're flipped not only pricing, you're flipped your sales cycles, and you're being very, very precise in who you're going after. Is that fair to say?
It's exactly that, because and that's the sales feedback loop.
Yeah.
Many times we ask the sales guys what the customer cares about.
Yeah.
And we ask him, what's most important to you when choosing a vendor? In our space, by the way, other spaces are different, but this is massive expense. Customers always say price and this, that, and this.
Mm-hmm.
So we say, okay, no problem. We'll give you the other this, that, and this, but we'll also give you a price together with that. You got to agree to that. And look at the cloud vendors. Coralogix today is like top 10 observability companies in the world by size. It's already in the game where people that use the product, we have all the compliances, all the things, 2,000 paying accounts. They already know that they're getting something that's going to be good enough. It's not going to be a disaster for the organization. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly about how do I make it efficient? How do I leave room to grow? And so when we come to the customer, we put it on the table. Listen, other products you'll buy, I mean, the biggest companies in our space, they're going to do the trick. It's not like we're going to do something that they can't do. There are some things, but there's some things that, so we can correlate everything together on a single alert, logs, metric tracing, or put it on a single stream. But then Datadog can do FinOps now and testing that we can't, right? So this is not where I win. I go about it, what's the most important thing for you? And I try to answer that. It is a moving target, though, because tomorrow, if we come back to 21 again and suddenly money is pouring all over the place, we're going to need to, recalibrate, which is okay. And we went through 21, and it was a great year also. What we've done back then, by the way, we sold more on the frequent search use case, and the balance wasn't 20 or 30%, it was 50 or 60% on frequent search, where the performance were just phenomenal. Because, when you like we use a hot index that doesn't do anything besides user queries, you're like, hey, a terabyte in 1 second. People just loved it. But this is just an example on how we always try to calibrate ourselves. And I think the concept of product market fit is changing. The market is moving so fast. My competitors, in the old days, startups competed with IBM and HP. It was easy. My competitors are as fast as me. You just got to be ready to break stuff. So that's another conclusion we came to.
Hey, Ariel, I wonder, you mentioned, being able to adapt to the market changes. What kind of tools or systems or processes did you set to allow you that nimbleness, that ability to quickly change and adapt? Let's say in a year from now, lots of money back on the street. How are you changing your pricing quickly? Is it something that is, super easy? Is there anything, more tricky when you want to do that?
Yeah, it's very easy to me to track because the customers move the data between the different use cases of log, compliance, monitoring, frequent search. They move it dynamically in the system, and I track that. So it's very interesting to see how now we see customers gradually moving to the lower price use cases. And when there's money, we'll see people moving back and upgrading. So in the past, when a company was, because remember, data still grows very fast. That we didn't change. When a company was growing 100 gigabytes in 21, they immediately just called us. We want an upgrade. Thank you very much. Here's the check. Upgrade. Today, we see them just take a couple 100 gigabytes, move it from frequent search to monitoring, which doesn't include the storage, and free up that space. So that's, for us, that's the barometer of how we look at what is the amount, what's the dollar amount that a customer is willing to pay for a gigabyte.
Yeah, basically have like a sensitivity meter that is always on, so you can literally track customers' consumption patterns and see if there is, a market opportunity or the market is slowing down to some extent.
And we get basically to a blend of 2,000 accounts, and what is the blend of the unit price that the average customer per geography is willing to pay.
Makes sense. All right, this is such an exciting story, Ariel. I'm so generally we don't get to hear so much innovation based on the price. Is there anything else you'd like to leave as an advice for founders who are just starting their journey? Seems like this was being a sort of like bloodied nose sort of environment that you've grown up in, trying to pivot and being so agile. I'm curious if there's something, or maybe something you would tell yourself when you were starting earlier on, right, before this whole journey even began.
Yeah, I think coming back to the beginning of the call is two main things that I've learned. One is to focus in an honest way on the main thing that your product is solving, and ask every product decision needs to serve that one thing. Be very coherent. What I mentioned about tracing, like no way something's cheaper than us, lose money. Be coherent always. And I'll tell you something that I've done with sales that is very different than any other company, and some of the sales guys hated me. I said, this is the max price that I'm willing to sell a gigabyte, the max price. And sales guys, they want commission. They want to sell a big deal. So they'd come, and the customer is so happy with the platform, I can easily sell that at the competitor's price or higher, and he still prefers us. So they kept doing that, and we kept getting deals where my price was higher than the largest companies in the space, and the contract was signed, and, sales guy's happy. And I said at that point, I am not paying commission on anything sold over this number per gigabyte. So if a gigabyte costs $1 and you sold 1,000 gigabytes, your deal is $1,000. I tell you, this is how much I pay. $1,000 per 1,000 gigabytes. If you sold that in $2 per gigabyte, you're still going to get commission for 1,000. And that, aligns sales with the message. And then there's coherent message. It's always the most cost-effective option to choose from. So that's one thing I've learned, in aligning with the one thing you solve for the customer. And two, figure out, in terms of pricing, figure out what is the pricing you want to offer, then go back and see what technology serves that pricing. Those are the key learnings I had.
Makes sense.
Spot on, and yeah, and I can already, see how, you are being always consistent with the way you think about your company. Like you're looking at this and saying, hey, cost effective is the thing that we do, number one thing that we do, and all across messaging, pricing, product, technology, everything aligns to that. Love it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being with us on the podcast, Ariel. Really appreciate it. Super, super awesome story. Thanks again for your time.
Really, really fun. And it's awesome to have a podcast on this topic that I think is not mentioned and not talked about enough. So that's great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.